TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Good afternoon. This is TNCRadio.LIVE, and this is the Truckers Network Radio Show with your host, Shelley Johnson.
You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is the Truckers Network Radio Show, and I'm Shelley Johnson. We're all about the news, talk, information, entertainment, and sports that drivers want to hear about. You know, there are not many drivers who have driven over 4 million miles accident-free or had a truck stop or burger named after them. The Carolina Monkey Gouger, Jimmy Ardis, has. Jimmy has a heart of gold, and he's a tireless advocate for people with disabilities, as well as an advocate for truckers. Jimmy's appeared in Freedom the Movie, produced by Morgan Spurlock, starring comedian Billy Wayne Davis. And Jimmy is liked by most everyone who meets him. He's got some great stories and an opinion on most everything. I'm excited to talk to Jimmy. Thank you, Jimmy, for being on the show today.
Shelley, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to get to talk to you, and I want to thank you and the listening audience.
You know, you're quite the inspiration. I was reading about your background. You've been the champion for the disabled and for truckers, and you're a fearless fighter. You're a 56-year cancer survivor, which is why you lost your arm and beat the odds as a child. And then you went on to become a driver, even when people wouldn't necessarily let you. Could you kind of give us a little bit of background on that?
Well, when I was 6, I was diagnosed with fibrosis sarcoma cancer, and the only way that they can stop that cancer is to try to cut it off at a joint. And they decided that they would take it off above my elbow, and the doctor said it was in an advanced stages that when he got in there and got to doing the surgery. Yeah, I did not know any of this until about 25 years later. Matter of fact, the doctor that took my arm off, he stayed in touch with me over the years, and he was getting ready to retire, and I happened to be in his office in Oklahoma City one day, and he said, "I got a present for you," and he handed me my medical records, and he said, "Now don't open none of this while you're in my office." He said, "I want you to go back to your motel," because I was having an arm built at Scott Soblett's Research in Oklahoma City. They built my arms ever since for 56 years.
Okay.
And he said, "I want you to read this when you're sitting down so to soak in on you." And he says, "You got any questions, you can call me." But I got to going through his notes after the surgery, and they had a consultation with my mother and father. And in his consultation, it was about 3 weeks before Christmas when they took my arm off. And he had, in the consultation, he said that I had informed the young boy's mother and father that he probably wouldn't live just very long after this amputation because of the advanced stage of the cancer. And to take him home and make him happy and give him the biggest Christmas he'll ever have, because they didn't look for me to live very much longer than after Christmas.
Wow. And
at my 6-month checkup, he said I have talked to the young boy's mother and father again, and he's made it 6 months, and said we're gonna give him another 6 months. Well, every 6 months, I was having to go back for chest x-rays and stuff like that. And everything was coming back clear. So after 2 years, they turned me loose. They said, "Hey," said, "we don't know. It's a miracle of God, I reckon. He's cancer-free. And we can't explain it. And it's just a miracle." And so, I started out, getting to live a normal, not being in fear of coming back, which I didn't. Wasn't really in fear of it. I was too young to understand what was really going on.
Sure.
And so I went on playing baseball and football. I was all-star first baseman, and was done everything that I wanted to do as a young boy wanted to do. I mean, I went out and done it, and kept on. But my biggest interest was trucks. I've always had an infatuation with trucks. And my mother always said that when I was inside her that I was always trying to get out. Said I was driving they said when I come out I dropped the steering wheel and a gear stick on the delivery room floor. And I mean I was just infatuated with trucks. That's all I ever wanted to do all my life was drive a truck. And, as the years went over, I got to take trips with friends and my uncle and stuff that had a truck and went on through life. And then, I was with my uncle one day and I'd been with him about a year or two. And he told me, he said, son, he said, it's time for you get cut. It's time for you to be kicked out the nest. I've taught you everything that I can teach you. Now get out there and show me something. So I went to work for a fella. I was working on farms and stuff, trying to make ends meet, and
How old were you at this point? How old were you at this point?
I was 19.
Okay.
And I got my first truck driving job, driving intrastate, hauling wood chips when I was 19 years old. And we wasn't worried about no government intervention at the time. I didn't know what government rules was. I mean, I just went to the wood factory or the chip yard and we was making what we was hauling them for was Embers charcoal at Lake City, South Carolina. And when I drove for him about a year and a half, I got 21, and he said, "Hey, I'm gonna put you over the road hauling charcoal." And so I got, here I got turned out in another avenue, running the road with a big truck, and man, I got the fever bad. And I said, if I can make him a living, I can make a living. So I went out and bought my first truck and trailer. I was wildcatting produce, and hauling out of Florida back to South Carolina and got hooked up with a pretty good brokerage there in Columbia, South Carolina, off the farmer's market. And it was CB Marchant. And I had come out of Florida one afternoon right there and got up on the scales at Jacksonville, and the federal DOT happened to be there. And they pulled me in, and this guy come over, and he said, first thing I want to ask you is, where's your waiver? I said, what waiver? He said, the waiver for you to drive a truck on the interstate highways. I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. Well, he got to talking to me there, and he seen I was just oblivious to what was going on, which I was. I didn't know. I mean, I thought, you go out and buy a truck. You could do anything you wanted to. I didn't know nothing about all these federal rules and regulations.
Right.
And he went and got the green book, come back, and he thumbed through it, and he said, right here, if you're missing an arm or a leg, he said, you have to have a federal waiver, son. He said, you cannot drive like this. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, I just bought this truck and trailer. He said, tell you what I'm going to do. He said, I'm going to let you go. He said, I'm going to turn my head and say, I better see black smoke flying. He said, you go home, and here's numbers for you to call, get everything sorted out. He said, but if I catch you back to the state of Florida in that truck, he said, I'll bury you next time. He said, I'm not playing with you. He said, this is for your good and everybody else that's involved. And I said, oh, boy, here we go. So, I had just got married, had a baby boy, and a truck trailer payment, house payment, electricity, it all come to an end. I thought my world had just, oh man, it had just collapsed.
Right.
So
yeah.
I I went home and sat down. I got to thinking, looking at all that stuff he wrote down for me, and I said, there's only one way to cut the head off this snake, and that's to go directly to the source. And so Elizabeth Dole was the Secretary of Transportation at that time, and her husband, Bob Dole, had been injured in World War II. And I don't know how many people remember that Bob Dole, but he kept an ink pen in his hand when nobody would try to shake his bad arm. So I wrote her a letter and explained to her what was going on and everything and that I was in dire straits. And my wife at the time looked at me and said, you're wasting 15 cents for nothing. I said, you don't ever know till you try.
That's
I said,
true.
we're going to use all avenues. And I kind of thought at the moment when I wrote the thing that it was wasted ink, but I was going to do it anyway because I was on my last avenue. I mean, it was either get something done or, lose everything you worked for. So about 3 days later, I get a phone call from Elizabeth Dole.
Wow.
And she said, Jimmy said, I'm Elizabeth Dole, Secretary of Transportation. I about dropped the phone.
I bet.
She said, I understand you're having some red tape issues. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, well, look, let me tell you what I've done. She said, I set you up for you to meet one of our field directors, and said, I got a phone number for you, and said, I've also got a lead on a truck driving job for you. And said, if you can pass that waiver, she said, this man in Atlanta, Georgia will hire you to, lease your truck on. And it was Richard Beecham for refrigerated transport. He was the largest refrigerated carrier in the world at that time.
How
and
awesome.
She gave me his phone number. So first I had to do is I had to call this gentleman over there at the Atlanta field office for the FMSCA. His name was Clinton Magby. Great guy, level-headed. I mean, but the thing that got me was he said, Mr. Ardis, I'm going to tell you something right now. Do not write another letter. Do not make another phone call. The buck stops with me right now. He said, I'm in charge of you. And he said, I'm coming to South Carolina Monday morning to road test you and check your abilities. And I said, well, let me ask you this. I said, I got a job interview in Atlanta after you pass me. I said, how about you just let me come to Atlanta and we'll do everything in Atlanta? He says, all right. He says, I'll do that. He said, I will grant you temporary law to come over here. He said, I'll send you a piece of paper. If anybody stops you, you just show them this paper and all that. So we got all that done. And so, all weekend, I don't believe I slept a wink.
Oh, I bet.
I was thinking about what I was going to be tested, what was going on. I never experienced none of this.
Sure.
And nobody could tell me, what to look for, because I was one of the few one-armed truck drivers in America. I mean, it was almost non-existent. And so I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So, I left the house Sunday night so I could get over to Atlanta. And matter of fact, I got to park on Refrigerated Transport's yard because that's where we done the part of the test at. And so the next morning he come and he got out and he shook my hand, told me who he was, and he said, are you ready? And I said, yes. He said, well, show me how you going to road check this thing. Let's do a pre-trip. Let's go through all that. So I went through the pre-trip, everything. He said, all right, are you ready to get on the road? And I said, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. So we hit Atlanta and went out on 285 and then went downtown Atlanta, 75, 85, got off, went down 1941, Moreland Avenue. I mean, he had me driving all over Atlanta. And he'd say, back up right there, back up in that place right there. So I positioned the truck back in, and this went on for almost three hours.
Wow.
Now, the test was only supposed to be 45 minutes long. And so, when they give you these rules and regulations of what they're going to do, they tell you, that the road test is going to be 45 minutes and no talking to the examiner and all this, and I'm looking down at my watch. I said, we're going into the third hour. I must have messed up somewhere really bad. Because, I was backing in places that a seasoned truck driver would have had trouble.
Wow.
And so I backed into this one dock over there. It was I'll never forget it. It was down from Nally Peterbilt there off of Moreland Avenue, and it was kind of tight, and I got in there and got out. And I said, Mr. Magby, I said, I know I'm not supposed to talk to you. I said, but I got a question for you. I said, what did I do wrong? He said, son, you ain't done nothing wrong. He says, you had your waiver a long time ago. He said, I would just enjoy watching you. He said, you were like a symphony orchestra. Everything was just bam, 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 bam. He said, I don't get many drivers like this. And I said, so I passed, So he said, yes, you passed. He said, go on back to the yard. So, I went back to the yard, and he shook my hand. And he said, now you got to come down to Atlanta tomorrow. And he said, I'll have everything fixed up for you, have your waiver. And he said, now look, this waiver's only good for 2 years. And he said, every 2 years, he said, you just send me a renewal. And he said, you done took the road test and everything. And he said, we'll okay it. He said, don't have no wrecks, no speeding tickets. They had a whole list of stuff there. I've been under scrutiny by the federal government for 46 years.
That's what I read.
I had to be, on my game,
mm-hmm.
and everything, and so anyway, we went. Mr. Beecham come down, and he said, "Well, son, are you ready to go to work?" And I said, "Yes, I'm ready." And Richard Beecham, he was he was a visionary, and he would, he'd give anybody that wanted to work a chance.
Mm-hmm.
He said, if you're crazy enough to write me, come over here and go to work for me, he said, I'm crazy enough to work you. And so I went through orientation there, which was about 3 days long and everything, and I got my first load for refrigerated transport. And man, I was happy and smiling, and an old truck that I had at that time, it was roadworthy, but it was one of them you drive it 400 or 500 miles, and you work on it 3 or 4 hours.
Sure.
And so, Richard had a fleet of Peterbilts over there that he was selling on lease purchase program. And one day I had come into the office, and I was covered in grease and everything else. And he said, "Hey," he said, "I need to talk to you." And he says, I said, "Well, boss," I said, can we do it kind of fast?" I said, "Because I got to go out there and work on my truck so I can load another load." He said, "That's exactly what I want to talk to you about." He said, "You go up and take a shower, clean up, and you come back down here to my office, and we're going to sit down and talk about this." I said, "Okay." And I'm thinking, why would he want me in his office? This man's got 3,500 trucks on the road.
Right.
And he's wanting me to come back and talk to me. So I'm thinking, you know what? He's probably going to give me the axe. My head's spinning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went down to his office. And he was sitting there, and I'll never forget, he was looking through this book.
How are you
and
doing
it had
today?
all kind of trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Jimmy," said, "I want to tell you something."
Yeah, just put it on the right side there, please.
He said, "I want to tell you something." He said, "You are one of my number one drivers." He said, "You got no late deliveries." He said, "You are the top of the top money earners." And he said, "You cannot continue to drive that raggedy truck that you got." Well, that kind of hurt my feelings. I took a lot of pride in that ride. It was
sure.
my first truck.
You betcha.
My first truck. And I'm proud, you know. He said, what we going to do is, he said, I've got 10 Peterbilts sitting down there. He said, you go down there and you pick you out a Peterbilt. Well, you know, I mean, that's every Southern boy dreamed on a Peterbilt. Boy, my head's full up like a watermelon. I said, I'm going to get on a Peterbilt, man. I said, look at this. He said, the second thing we're going to do is when you find that truck, we're going to find a salvage yard and sell that wreck out there to them. And you're going to take your down payment and put it toward this truck. Oh, man, I was happy. I was jumping up and down. So I went down there, and I had an old friend of mine. His name was Bobby Hines. He was a family friend. Knowed him for years. And he was down there, and I said, Bobby, I said, Richard's going to sell me a truck. He said, okay. He said, well, let's go get it. Let's go find us. Let's go over here and look and get the best one we can find. And they was like 2 or 3 years old. And so went over there. And mechanic come out that he knew, and he said, Bobby said, that white Peterbilt right there, said, we just rebuilt the engine, done the transmission, both rear ends. I said, it's got 10 brand new tires on it. If that's the truck you want, he said, that's the truck I'd pick right there. So I picked it. And, you know, I went down there back to Mr. Beaton's office and told him I'd found a truck. And he said, good, Jimmy, good. He said, which one did you pick out? And I said, I picked that solid white one out down there. He said, good choice. And he said, well, it's your truck. He said, all we got to do is sell this rental wreck you got, and we're done. So I got $5,000 out of that international and put it down to payment. And my truck payment, it come out every week, was $168 a week. Big truck payment, you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was so happy, man. I was just walking on the clouds. I was just floating. And, you know, I worked over there for almost 12 years, and I was always on his number one board. I'd done regular runs from where I was assigned runs and stuff, and I had got pretty, you know, cocky, I reckon you could say. I didn't think nobody could touch me. I'm running around, got a big old diamond ring on, got the snakeskin boots, the creased Levi's, you know, cowboy shirt, cowboy hat. Mm-hmm. Ain't nobody could touch me. I'm at the top of the game. So one night, me and Bobby was sitting in his office, and I was sitting in his chair and had my feet propped up on his mahogany desk there, and Richard had a barber's chair. Whenever he was talking, he always get in that barber chair. And he looked over there at me, and he said, hey, boy, he said, you think you're doing something, don't you? I said, oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir, I think I'm doing something. I said, I'm your top driver. I said, I'm sitting here talking to you, laid back. He said, let me tell you something, son. He said, I will screw you just as fast as I screw somebody else. And I thought, wait a minute, what are you talking about here, boss? He said, Jimmy, you ain't got no friends in the trucking business. He said, this is a dog-eat-dog world. And he said, don't let nobody take advantage of you. And he said, I'm just letting you know you're getting a little bit, you're not watching out for what's going on. And I said, yes, I know where you're coming from now. He said, I want you to remember one thing. Success is a lifetime in coming. Humiliation is just an eye blink away. Well, a couple of years later, I found out what he was talking about because he was on the verge of bankruptcy and about to lose the company. And I was in his office one day, and I said, boss, I said, what happened? He said, Jimmy, he said, you remember what I told you about trusting people? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I trusted the wrong people, and it's got me in a bind. I'm going to sell out. And he said, remember what I told you? It took me a lifetime to build this company, and now I'm going to lose it with one stroke of the pen. And that's always stuck. That always stuck with me through my trucking career. You know, remember, you ain't never too big or too powerful to bomb out. And that's kind of the way that I've tried to look at the way I run my business. You know, do what I got to do to stay in business. and don't worry about what everybody else is doing.
I'd say that's a good philosophy. We're going to have to go to break here, Jimmy. This has been a great story. We're going to have some more stories here with the Carolina Monkey Gouger, Jimmy Ardis. You've got some great stories and some great lessons here for new drivers especially. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson, and I have my co-host Tom Kirk here now. We'll be coming back with more great stories. Stay tuned.
This infoblog on TNCRadio.LIVE is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 6 things to consider before starting your career in trucking. Truck drivers are often referred to as the backbone of America. They haul roughly 70% of America's freight. Nearly every good consumed in the United States has been shipped by a truck. Right now, the demand for truck drivers is higher than ever. The growing truck driver shortage in America is a topic of concern and has been for the past 4 years. The United States is in dire need of people to start driving trucks. Are you considering becoming a truck driver, but not quite sure if it's the career path for you? Here are 6 things potential truck drivers need to know before starting their career in the trucking industry. Know your why. Why do I want to become a truck driver? Is one of the first questions you should ask yourself before starting your career in trucking. Knowing and understanding your why is important so that you make sure that trucking is something you'll enjoy. Nothing is more draining than working in a career field that you're not passionate about and excited about. Truck drivers are already more likely to struggle with mental health problems because of the trucking lifestyle. So to avoid dreading your trucking career, ask yourself, why do I want to be a truck driver? Long work hours. It's obvious that truck drivers spend a majority of their workday in the driver's seat, but many new drivers don't realize how hard it can be sitting for long periods. Drivers spend hours upon hours sitting down. This can result in leg, back, and neck pain. If you're the type of person who cannot handle sitting down for several hours at a time, then truck driving is not for you. Another thing to consider is how long a typical workday is for a truck driver. Drivers are legally allowed to work 14 hours a day, but are limited to 11 hours of driving time. They must take a mandatory 30-minute break by the 8th hour of duty. Following the long workday, drivers must have 10 hours of off-duty time. In a work week, drivers cannot exceed more than 60 hours of work or 70 hours over 8 days. Failure to follow these HOS rules can result in being shut down, fines, and lower carrier safety ratings. A new lifestyle. There's not a career quite like trucking. It's nothing like your typical 9-to-5 Monday through Friday job. It's long hours, days, and most times weeks away from home. Truck drivers often experience loneliness, depression, and anxiety. If you're someone who's used to working with many people, then truck driving will be a shock. Drivers will go days or weeks without seeing their loved ones, and it can really take a toll on truckers, especially those who are new. Adjusting to this lifestyle can be challenging at first, but once you do, you can live a rewarding life as a truck driver. Getting seat time. The more experience you have as a truck driver, the better. With more experience, you'll land better truck driving jobs and better pay. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, truck drivers earn an average of over $40,000 a year. Yet, many trucking companies advertise higher rates of pay for experienced drivers. Over time, you can negotiate a higher rate per mile. Your relationships will suffer. It doesn't matter if you're on the road or at home. Make time for family. Make it a priority to talk to someone in your family once a day. It can be tough for truckers, especially long-haul truck drivers, to maintain relationships with their families due to the trucking lifestyle. Keeping in contact with your loved ones will help life on the road be less lonely. Lack of sleep. Getting the recommended amount of sleep each night is a rare thing for truckers. Although sleep may be difficult for truckers because of the uncomfortable way of living, it's essential to their well-being and safety. Make it a priority to get good sleep and make a sleep schedule. Set an alarm for a certain time and turn off all electronics and get your much-needed sleep. Not getting enough sleep makes life on the road miserable. Although there may seem like many downsides, truck driving can be a very rewarding and exciting career. As a truck driver, you have freedom on the open road and the chance to see America's most beautiful places. For information on trucking, be sure to check out the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
For the latest in Houston traffic, weather, news, and information, don't miss the Evening Surge on TNCRadio.LIVE. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is the Truckers Network radio show. I'm Shelley Johnson with my co-host Tom Kirk, and we're talking with the Carolina Monkey Gouger and trucker Jimmy Ardis. Jimmy, you had a great story about how you began and the lessons you learned early with one of your first bosses. I wanted to backtrack for just a second. I heard that you learned to drive truck through the yardstick method. That's kind of unusual, I would think, but how does that work?
The yardstick method was invented by my uncle, Herbert Anderson. And when I started driving, he'd get in a sleeper. And now you got to remember, I'm an 18-year-old kid driving at night, going cross country, because we move household furniture all over the United States. And back in them days, I was called his striker. And you know, striker is like a fill-in driver or something like that. That was a common used word back in the old days of trucking.
Right.
And so he'd get back there, you know, and I drove farm tractors and I drove gasoline trucks. We had old B61 Mac there on the farm, and I wasn't real good let's just say I wasn't real good at shifting gears in the beginning. And he'd get back there in that sleeper, and he said, every time you scrape a gear, I'm going to scrape your knuckles. I said, yeah, okay. Well, it didn't take about 4 or 5 times of him wrapping my knuckles with that yardstick, and I become a professional gear jammer almost overnight. He'd tell me, he said, they're not making them out of hamburger meat this week, son. So, I mean, he'd get that, and I mean, he'd lay it to it. You know, you'd have your hands up on that gear stick. Wow! He said, ease them in there. Don't jam it. Ease them in there. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, like I say, almost overnight, I become a professional gear jammer. But, you know, after he turned me loose there, I went to truck driving school there. I went to Sumter Area Tech to kind of have a little bit more on my resume. You know, they thought it'd be a good thing for me to do is go to truck driving school. And a good friend of mine that was a state congressman there at in South Carolina, he got with the vocational rehabilitation, which I am a big supporter of vocational rehabilitation. And the reason I am is for what they done for me. And that goes back to what I'm saying. If you got the will, anything is possible in the United States of America. So they helped me. They set it up through a grant where I could go to truck driving school. And so you know, this was another thing that I was real excited about. You know, the first day of school, first night of school, I was working on the farm and going to school at night. And first night I got there, they had the class I halfway through it on the first break. This teacher, name was Fred Dennis. He called me to the side and he said, "Hey, look," he says, "you can go ahead and pack your stuff up. Don't get comfortable." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You're out of here." He said, "There ain't no such thing as no one-armed truck drivers." And he said, "I'm running a school for a job," and he said, "You can get out of here."
Wow.
Well, my bubble got busted, you know. I said, here's something else to jump through. So on the way home, I went by Charlie Griffin's office, which was the representative there for our, you know, state representative, and he had his light on. He was a lawyer, and we used to call him Matlack. I mean, this guy was phenomenal. I mean, anybody had law trouble, you didn't have to pay me a couple of dollars every week, you know, I'll take care of it. And state representative, and he took care of the people in the county we lived in. And I seen his light on. I pulled in there, and I walked in there, and he said, "Hey, Bo," said, "what's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well," I said, "they just kicked me out of truck driving school." He said, "What'd you do?" I said, "They told me there wasn't no such thing as a one-armed truck driver. That he couldn't teach me." He said, I couldn't learn. He says, "We'll see about that." He says, in the morning, he says, we're going to be up at something area tech. He said, we're going to show them a little bit about Jimmy Ardis. I said, okay. So the next morning, we went to the dean's office at something area tech there, and the guy that was over vocational rehabilitation, he was there.
Okay.
And I mean, he is ready to just rip somebody apart. And so the dean come out and said, "We'll see y'all." Now we walk in there, and there's the dean, and then there's this guy that's teaching the truck driving school, and I mean there's people in there in suit and ties I'd never even seen. They had pedigrees that was long as my name, and I'm thinking, oh man, what have I walked into? So the guy from vocational rehabilitation, good friend of mine, he spoke up and he said, "Hey," he said, "ain't this supposed to be an institution of higher learning?" Yep. He said, "That means anybody can come here, right?" He said, "Yeah." And Charlie cut him off. He said, before you go on there, Emmett," he said, "just hold on a minute." He said, "I want to know the reason that you kicked him out of truck driving school." And at that time, the instructor spoke up, and he had that green book, and it says, any motor carrier, you must go by all these rules and regulations and all this stuff. And he doesn't fit the criteria. He said, "Well, first of all, do you have a ICC motor carrier number?" He said, "No." He said, "So you're a truck driving school, not a truck line, right?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "So you kicked that boy out of here for no reason at all." He said, "Because we're trying to get him qualified to where he can get a truck driving school." And he says, "I'm going to tell you something right now." And the dean spoke up, and he said, "Tell you what we'll do, Charlie, instead of just going getting blowed out of proportion and everybody getting the feathers ruffled," he said, "I'm going to make one phone call." And he said, "Well, who you going to call?" He said, "I'm going to call the insurance company." And said, "The insurance company said Jimmy can drive. We'll put him back in the truck tonight." Well, they called the insurance company and told them what was going on. They said, "Absolutely. You're covered." He said, it's a training school. That's all it is. He doesn't have an ICC number, motor carrier number, none of that. He said, it's a training school. He said, that's the reason you get insurance, to cover this. Boy, that instructor turned red in the face. I mean, he didn't know what to say.
Perfect.
So the dean looked at me, shook my hand, and said, "Jimmy, I hope you graduate the top of your class." And I said, "I promise you one thing, sir." I said, I will graduate the number one candidate in this class." So, we went back to school, and the instructor, Mr. Dennis, me and him become the best of friends. I mean, when I graduated number one in that class. I scored the highest score that ever of any graduating class in Sumter County.
Good for you.
And when he introduced me, he said, "I never had a son, but I got one now." And he said, "I want to announce that Jimmy Ardis took first place in graduation." And then after it was over with, he come over to me and said, "Hey, you want a job?" I said, "Doing what?" He said, "Working for me." He said, "You trained half of them in here." And whenever they'd have somebody that's having trouble, people, I don't know what it is, but whenever they get around an instructor, a teacher or something, they have a tendency to freeze up. Well, I could get in the truck with them. I said, "Hey, man, just be normal. Use your head. and don't fight the stick, and it all worked. And you know, and I got a good many of them qualified. And I said, Mr. Dennis, I said, I would love to go to work for you, and thank you for considering me for going to work. Yeah, I said, but I got the open highways on my deal. So he said, well, you got one more hurdle to clear. I said, what's that? He said, you have got to go down tomorrow and take your chauffeur's license test. And he said, that guy done told me he gonna flunk you.
Ugh.
He said, I didn't. He said, I didn't want to tell you and discourage you. He said, but they done told me that you are flunked before you ever take the test. So this guy come over, and I called him Lieutenant Jackass. He got out the car there, and he started, you know, and he had a cross in his hand. I'll never forget as long as I live. And he had his cross in his hand, and he said, look, he said, I in my home, he said, there is no way that I can let you drive a truck. And I said, you're telling me you're a man of God and you're not going to give me a chance? You ain't much of a man of God, because if you was a man of God, you'd give me a chance to drive that truck.
Amen to that.
So anyway, here we go. We're right back to square one. And at that point, at that point, I was ready to give up. I done had enough. I done proved myself, graduated number one out the class, everything, you know, and this one guy is going to train wreck me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going back home. I see Charlie's light on in his office, that I pulled in there, and he said, Jimmy, congratulations. I just got the word. I said, well, before you go any further, I said, we have had another roadblock throwed up against us. And he said, what's that? I said, I got to go take my driving test. And I said, the guy flunked me. I said, he didn't let me get a chance to get in the truck or nothing. I said, he just flunked me right on the spot. He said, give me that man's name. He said, in the morning, he said, I want you in my office about 8 o'clock. And he said, we're going to sort through this. He said, I got to read some law, see what we can do. And he says, but son, don't give up. He said, I know you're discouraged. He said, I know you're upset. He said, just go home, get a good night's rest, and believe me, you have done everything possible. He said, now it's my turn to flex my muscles. I said, okay. Well, I felt a little bit better, yeah, because, Charlie had never, he was a family friend. He had never let me down.
Right.
And so I went home and got a good night's rest and everything. So the next morning, I go up to his office, and I walk in. He said, come on, we're going to Columbia. I said, going to Columbia? He said, yeah, we're going to the driver's license office. And so we went to the driver's license office, and this part here is I just couldn't believe what happened. We walked in there, and there was a gentleman there. He was head over the South Carolina driver's license department. His name was Bunk Bunnell. Great man, level-headed man. And he sat down there, and he got to talking to me. He said, son, you always wanted to be a truck driver? I said, yes, all my life I wanted to drive a truck. That's all I wanted to do is drive a truck. He says, I understand you graduated number one in your class over there yesterday. I said, yes, sir. He says, well, I want to know what was said over there when this guy come to test you. And I told him the same story I told y'all. He said, okay. He said, I want to tell you something. He said, I've got a cousin that was in the bombing of Pearl Harbor, lost both his arms, and said he raised 2 children, 2 girls, beautiful girls. He changed their diapers. He done everything with them 2 hooks. And he said, I know in my mind with your determination, you're gonna make South Carolina proud of us. I said, I will. He said, when he gets over here, he said, he's going to come over here and he's going to have a stack of books. He's going to start. He said, just sit there and don't say a word. I said, okay. So he come in there, had them stack of books, had a stack of papers. He starts quoting law, and Mr. Bunnell reached across the desk, slapped all them books off of the table. He said, you know, there is something called common sense here. He said, you never even give a boy a chance to show he can drive a truck. He said, I tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get in that car, and you're going to carry him over that driver's license office and say, he's going to get his driver's license today. And I don't want to hear another word out of you. And he said, Jimmy, don't prove me wrong. And I said, I won't. So, I mean, that was the starting of the career to go where I've been. And while we're talking about this,
mm-hmm.
I'm the only man in America driving a tractor trailer with one arm that has succeeded to 6 million miles without an accident.
Wow. That is awesome.
And, you know, when we was talking a while ago about I never would let them down. I mean, I carried a lot of weight on my shoulders. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I knew the government was looking over me, watching me, everything I done. And so I had to try harder than anybody, you know.
Sure.
And I mean, I've been tested at every corner. I'll never forget one time I was in Boston and had a load of meat, and I used to unload all my trucks. You know, I could throw box beef or whatever. And this guy told me, he said, you ain't gonna load that truck. And I said, do what? He said, there's no way that I'm going to let you unload that truck. He said, you just can't do it. And he said, I ain't got all day to mess with you. So, I mean, I said, whatever. I mean, you know, it's your meat. You don't want me to touch it. I won't touch it, you know. So he called the company. He tells them, he said, hey, don't ever send that clown back in here. I said, he can't unload a truck. He said, sir, that clown had to be one of our top drivers. And said, that boy unloads that box meat everywhere he goes. And said, we don't know why you won't let him unload. But said, we don't need your business no way.
Oh, good.
So, you know, they cut him all right off at his knees.
Excellent. Yes.
And I mean, some of the stares that I get when I get out of a truck is, I mean, it's just, how do you drive a truck, you know, or something like that. And I mean, very carefully, you know.
Right.
How you do it with one arm, you know, and the thing that gets me more than anything, the one pet peeve that I have is I don't mind telling anybody how I lost my arm, but let me get to know you before you start asking personal questions. You know what I mean? Just to walk up to me and say, hey, Mac, how'd you lose your arm?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
I mean, people are so stupid.
They really are.
And, you know, and it's every day. I mean, it's my wife, who I've been married to now for 30 years, Miss Debbie, the love of my life. She said, Jimmy, do you ever get tired of it? I said, I love having fun messing with them. It's just like the other day, I went to the hair salon with her. You know, I mean, I don't get to see her a whole lot. She was off that day, and I said, I'm gonna go up there to the hair salon. I'm gonna get the pedicure, get me a pedicure, and get my fingernails clipped. And so we're sitting there, and this woman come in, and she's looking at me, and she's just staring, and I said, oh God, here it comes, it's coming. And I start counting on my fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, how'd you lose your arm? And I said, well, ma'am, I said, it was like this. I said, you know where Sparkleberry Swamp is? And she said, yeah. I said, when I was a little boy, my daddy tied me to a rope and throwed me out over the boat using me for alligator bait. He told me to snatch me up, and he wasn't fast enough. And I said, gator grabbed my arm and snatched it off. She said, oh, my God, I can't believe this. Oh, that is so terrible. Just on and on and on. My wife's sitting over there, and her beautician, they are about to crack up. And everybody's laughing. Well, the woman realized she made a behind out of it. She gets up and leaves. Everybody starts having a laugh. I mean, if you can't laugh at yourself, you can't laugh. I mean, it's just like I was telling a story to my dispatcher the other night that happened at a truck stop. There were these two little boys. They was with their daddy on the truck. Spring break, so the kids come out and ride with their daddies and stuff. And they was one was 4 and one was about 5. Right. And they was wrecking havoc in that truck stop. One of them got up under the shoe shine thing there, and a woman walked by, and he reached out and grabbed her, and she went into cardiac arrest, right? So I was sitting there talking to the daddy, and he said, I don't know what I'm going to do with them. He said, they're about to tear this truck up. I said, boys will be boys. So I went into the shower, come out, got my shower bag, and so I'm walking out the door, and they hide behind some hedges there, and they jump out and grab me, and it scared me to death. I mean, I wasn't looking for it. One of them got my arms. I told you he was a transformer. I told you he's one of them transformers. So it's days like that really make it, it makes it funny.
Oh, sure. And absolutely.
That's the way I look at it.
You've been such an inspiration, and you had some people who were really on your side and were champions to help you get started, which is so important too. I wanted to ask, we don't have a whole lot of minutes before we get to the top of the hour, and I love all your stories here. How did you become the Carolina Monkey Gouger?
The way I become the Carolina Monkey Gouger, I had that name for a pretty good little while, ever since I was about 16 years old. When I got out after surgery where I could move around, I was climbing trees and cotton picker, and I'd get hungry. I could go up. I just didn't know how to come down. Mm-hmm. And there was 2 gentlemen that worked for my granddaddy for years on the farm. And Grandma would holler out, go get him. And they'd say, we're going to go get the little monkey. So they'd come out there and they'd get me. And when I was little, that's what they started calling me, was Monkey. Come here, Monkey. What you going to climb now, And so later on, I was about 16, my cousin was cutting weed over there in a field about a mile from us. And he called, we had Motorola radios, 2-way radios. I was running the truck back and forth. And I mean, anything that I drove wide open. I mean, tractor, lawnmower. I mean, if they had a go gear and it was on the floor. And my cousin called me, and he's all excited. He said, Jimmy, come over here. Said, the combine's on fire. And said, I'm trapped. Well, I jumped in the pickup, and I'm going through the yard, and I see Buster and Jack in the yard, and I grab them up, and I got this old pickup. We rolling down that dirt road. I mean, we are getting the job done. They both in the floorboard praying for their life. Oh, God, help us. Said, we get out of this truck from this Monkey Gouger man. Said, we ain't never getting back in here with him. And that's how the Monkey Gouger come into play right there. I was the Monkey Gouger from then on.
That's awesome. Oh, my goodness, Jimmy, you've got some great stories. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I would love to keep you for another hour here. Gosh, we definitely need to have you back on the station because you've got a lot of great messages. You're a wonderful advocate.
TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Hi, this is Tom Kelly, managing partner of IMSICO LLC, doing business as TNCRadio.LIVE. The website TNCRadio.LIVE and any content or podcast related to the website are copyrights of IMSICO LLC, copyright 2021. All rights reserved. Any redistribution or reproduction of all or any part of the contents in any form is prohibited other than the following. We welcome you to download and play the publicly available podcast and share with others for personal use. Please acknowledge TNCRadio.LIVE as the source of the material. You may not, except with our express written permission, distribute or commercially exploit the content. And while we endeavor to keep the information up to date and correct, we make no representations or warranties of any kind expressed or implied about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to the website, the podcast, or the information, products, services, or related graphics contained on the website or podcast for any purpose. Any reliance you place on such information is therefore strictly at your own risk. For additional information, including details regarding monetization of this podcast, send email to podcasts@tncradio.live.